Just as I turned a page, there was a knock at the door. I hesitated for a moment, thinking maybe it was a neighbor in need of help. I stood up and made my way to the door. As I reached the door, I got an uneasy feeling. I glanced through the peephole, expecting to see someone familiar. Instead, I saw two figures standing on my porch. They were children. A boy and a girl, no older than 10. Their faces were pale, almost ghostly under the dim porch light. They wore simple, old-fashioned clothes that looked out of place in this day and age. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Enough to see them more clearly, but not enough for them to come inside. I kept my voice steady and asked them if they needed any help. The children didn't respond immediately. They stood there staring at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Finally, the boy spoke, his voice eerily calm and flat. He told me that they were lost and asked for permission to come in and use the phone. The request seemed reasonable, but there was something unnerving about the way he said it. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I asked them about their parents, but they did not come up with any response. The girl stepped forward, locked her eyes with me with anger on her face, and told me that her parents would be here soon. Then she again asked me if they could come in just for a moment. I looked around for any sign of their parents, but the street was empty. My instinct screamed at me to shut the door, to send them away, but I was curious to know about them. I wanted to avoid them getting inside the house, so I asked for a phone number of their parents so that I could call them myself. The children exchanged a glance, and for the first time, I noticed their eyes. They were pitch black. The boy spoke again with an almost robotic tone. "We need to come in. It's important." Fear gripped me, and I slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling hands. I couldn't breathe properly and I was panicking. The knocking started again, this time louder and more insistent. "Let us in," the children demanded, their voices carrying a strange, hypnotic quality. "We won't hurt you. Just let us in." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. I grabbed my cell phone from the couch and dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hit the numbers. The operator asked me about my emergency. I responded while stammering, "There are children outside my house. They want to come in, but there's something wrong with them. Their eyes, they're black." The operator took my address and told me to stay calm. While on the phone, my house began to echo with loud thuds of knocks on the door, and all the glass windows were trembling as if it was an earthquake. I asked the operator to hurry up as my life was in danger. She kept me on the line as she sent officers for help. The seconds felt like hours as I waited, and the knocks were growing more frantic. "Let us in," the children chanted, their voices melding into a haunting chorus. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." I pressed my back against the wall, trying to distance myself from the door. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. I had heard stories about the black-eyed children before, but I never believed they were real. Now, faced with the terrifying reality, I didn't know what to do. The operator's voice broke through my thoughts. The operator told me that the officers would be there any moment, and asked me if the children were still outside. "Yes," I whispered, my eyes fixed on the door. They're still knocking. Suddenly, the knocking stopped. The silence was deafening, and I strained to hear any sign of the children. My heart was pounding. I heard the sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. I was relieved to hear it, and I let out a shaky breath. The children were gone, vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. The police arrived moments later, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I unlocked the door and let them in, my legs feeling like jelly. The officers searched the area, but there was no sign of the children. It was as if they had never been there. One of the officers, a stern-looking man with a graying beard, approached me. "We didn't find anyone. Are you sure about what you saw?" I nodded, my voice barely audible. Their eyes, they were black, completely black. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner, before turning back to me. "We'll keep an eye on the area. If you see or hear anything else, don't hesitate to call us." They left me standing in the doorway, my mind reeling from the night's events. I locked the door and double-checked the windows, making sure everything was secure, and went to my bedroom. As I was lying on my bed, thinking about what just happened, I felt as if the mattress on the other side got pressed as if someone sat on it. I turned around and screamed with fear to see the girl sitting on the other side of my bed. I jumped off the bed and sat on the floor in the corner of the room, and as I looked under my bed, I saw the boy with pitch-black eyes and pale skin, looking at me with a wide, creepy grin on his face. I trembled with fear and ran out of my room, and as I got in my living room, I bent down to see inside my bedroom if the kids were still there. All of a sudden, someone from outside hit the glass of my window and broke it. It was followed by creepy giggles outside the house. When I did not have any response from the bedroom, I went back in and everything was just the way it should be, and no one was inside. But right then, the house echoed with loud thuds all over the walls and door. The knocking grew louder and more desperate. I opened the main door of my house and saw those two kids standing right in front of me. With their expressionless face, pale skin, and pitch-black eyes staring at me, they asked, "Can you please help us?" And then they began to laugh like a maniac. I started screaming and ran outside. I turned back to look at my house and saw the boy standing at my door, looking at me with a creepy grin, and the girl was standing inside my house, looking at me through a broken window. She was waving at me with a creepy grin on her face. I ran to my neighbor's house. They called the police, and the police searched my house again. This time they found traces of footsteps in the house, but no one was seen inside. Over the next few days, I tried to go about my life as usual, but the fear lingered. I told this to some of my close friends, hoping for some comfort or advice. Most of them were sympathetic but skeptical. Only one friend took my story seriously. I crashed at his place for a couple of weeks. I didn't dare stay at my place after all of this. A couple of months have passed, and I have moved back home and started to forget about all of this. I just felt that I had to let this off my chest by sharing my experience of the sinister black-eyed children. It was the scariest thing I had ever been through in my entire life.